University of Edinburgh Carbon Management Master students. Welcome to our United Nations Nairobi Work Programme video, analysing climate change impact on Gorgie City Farm in Edinburgh, Scotland.
Gorgie City Farm is located in southwest of Edinburgh, 3 miles from the city centre. Until the 1930s, the location served as a city waste depot and was later used for civil defence training during the war. After the war, it was left much disused, and it wasn't until 1977 that the local community group decided to make use of this space. They began to clear the area, and the Gorgie City Farm was open to public in 1982.
The farm plays an important role in educating children and adults about the role of farming and the impact of climate change on agriculture and livestock around Edinburgh and Scotland. Edinburgh has a mild maritime climate with moderate summer temperatures of average high of 19.1 degrees Celsius in July and winter daytime temperature rarely falling below freezing with average low of 1.3 Celsius in December. The annual average temperature ranges between a high of 12.7 and a low of 5.9 Celsius. Edinburgh is positioned between the coast and hills and is therefore affected by strong winds coming from west and southwest, as well as high rainfall. The average precipitation of 700 millimeters is fairly evenly distributed throughout the year.
Edinburgh is expected to see a variety of changes to its climate, each dependent on the timescales and emission scenarios studied. If current temperature trends continue, Scotland can expect an increased prevalence of droughts and heatwaves, and while some crops may benefit from a longer growing season, crops that actually rely on cold weather over the winter will be more vulnerable as frosts decrease. Under a medium emission scenario for 2050 at the 50% probability level, East Scotland is expected to see a 10% increase in average winter precipitation, rising to a 20% increase at the 90% probability level. Conversely, East Scotland may experience a 13% decrease in average summer precipitation, with a 27% drop projected for a 10% probability level. Increasing winter rainfall and changes in rainfall patterns mean that Scotland's 50,000 kilometres of rivers are likely to flood more often. The most recent UK climate projections state that by 2050, at 50% probability and under a medium emission scenario, East Scotland will experience a mean winter temperature increase of 1.7 degrees centigrade and a mean summer temperature increase of 2.3 degrees centigrade. However, at the 90% probability level, mean summer temperatures are expected to increase by 4.5 degrees centigrade. In addition, the Scottish Agriculture and Climate Change Stakeholder Group report that the frequency and intensity of extreme events such as storms or droughts may increase, possibly sooner than changes to average conditions.
Scotland has experienced a variety of extreme weather events throughout 2016, some of which have directly affected Gorgie Farm, in particular the high winds and heavy rains carried by Storm Henry early this year. During Storm Henry, wind speed increased to 90 miles an hour in eastern Scotland. As we can see on the west side of this area, where the clouds are thicker, the stars brought 20 to 40 millimeters of rain. This combination of strong winds and heavy rains brought localized flooding, as well as power and transportation disruption. Gorgie's farm location is on the top of a hill, protecting it from floods but making it especially vulnerable to high winds.
At the beginning of 2016, we've experienced quite a lot of storms. Were there any particular impacts on the farm from those storms?
Yeah, the two largest ones was the falling down of the roof, got blown off the stables before the polytunnel got blown and ripped apart from the strong winds.
The altitude difference of 50 feet between the top of the farm to the lowest point makes it particularly vulnerable to the impacts of strong storms, bringing heavy wind and rain.
Strong storms having knocked down trees. So you see here where a tree had fallen down on the ground, and that makes the entire hillside unstable.
I see.
And because it's a high traffic area where kids play, we have issues of really bad erosion here. And you see all of these trees within the next year are going to have to either be taken out because they're unsafe.
We identified that high temperature induced by extreme weather events such as heat wave can affect the livestock. In this regard, we should note that without appropriate infrastructures and good ventilation, the impact on the farm can be significant. I was wondering, during warm summer, how is the ventilation here? Do you have an issue with it?
ventilation is good. If you see, we have exits on both sides, so there's a gap between the ceiling and this. But it is important not just for heat, but also for dust.
A changing climate may bring opportunities as well as risks for Gorgie City Farm. Here, I asked Jim and Josiah about such potentially beneficial impacts.
So Professor Dave Ray at the University of Edinburgh has claimed that due to increasing temperatures, the growing season in Scotland has actually extended by more than 5 weeks. Jim, in reality, do you actually see such changes on the ground?
I mean, to some extent there are extensions to the growing season. I think part of the problem is the unpredictability of it. So you can get a warm, very early warm spring, and then you get a really cold snap and it throws everything into disarray.
So we're looking at the statistics on a daily basis and looking at averages, but for you guys on the ground, the actual reality is there's still a lot of natural variability.
Yes, and I think that's the bit that needs to be focused on.
Especially with predictability. As climate change comes in, everything becomes more unpredictable, so it's harder to plan. And Josiah, what sort of impact would an increased growing season have actually on the business, if there were to be one? It would allow us to better do what we do. I mean, economically, the longer the seasons, on the tail ends of either seasons is where crops and fruit and veg are more valuable because they're rarer. Whereas at the height of the season, everything is cheaper.
After identifying the key impacts on the produce growing in the garden, we analyzed the impact of climate change on the livestock. The farm raises outdoor grazing animals such as cows, goat and sheep, and the temperature and precipitation will have effect on the animals as well as their surrounding.
So I'm here with Aurora and Alice in the background, and Jim, I understand that these lovely cows are being traded soon.
Yes, they are indeed. These two are going to be going away and we're going to be getting in some smaller.
So given that precipitation is expected to rise by around 10% between now and 2050, Josiah, what is that part of the thinking behind trading for smaller cow? Very much so. I mean, farming ruminants in a lot of ways is really farming grass, to where you have to provide their food, and as you can see in the ground, the more weight you have on the ground, especially as it retains more water, you have to keep an eye on how much stock you have on each land.
The farm's livestock can also be indirectly affected by a changing climate. In recent years, Scotland has seen an increase in incidences of lungworm, a disease which affects sheep and makes their lungs unusable. In a warmer, wetter climate, it's likely that the prevalence of this disease will increase. Jim, how vulnerable are the livestock here to disease and pests?
Well, they're very vulnerable with climate change, with fluctuations in temperature, and generally the temperature's getting warmer and then dropping. That makes a big difference to animals.
We will now move on to discuss transboundary impacts which climate change can have on Gorgie Farm. Revenue streams of the farm are coming from three sources: grant funding, support from businesses and community, and income from sales of the produce.
The impact of climate change on private and public locations in Edinburgh and Scotland could put at risk the donations necessary to keep the farm running. The businesses and communities affected by extreme weather events might not be able to provide financial support.
Climate change will bring new challenges to the food production in Scotland and across the globe and increase people's interest in local, self-sustaining food production. The farm is already benefiting from local restaurants' interest in sustainably produced product, and the farm expects to play a more and more important role in educating people about small-scale food production as the global food prices become more volatile.
After reviewing the vulnerabilities to climate change impacts on Gorgie City Farm, it's apparent that the farm is currently impacted more by climate extremes, such as droughts and heat waves, than more gradual changes in climatic averages. In particular, unpredictability in weather makes food production and animal husbandry more challenging.
It's also noticeable that a substantial amount of autonomous and planned adaptation is being undertaken around the farm, such as through new infrastructure and climate-induced livestock rotation, and that this will help the business mitigate some of the worst impact of climate change.
Gorgie City Farm is an essential part of the local community. Therefore, the farm must be helped to adapt to the impacts of climate change identified in this video. Thank you for watching.
Hello.